And bam. All right, everybody, we are here with the inaugural community kickoff event the day before the hackathon. It's pretty exciting. There's already a lot of interest. We've had over 100 signups from developers. We've had breaking news that everybody from IBM, Panasonic, and even Simba is going to be partnering this event. But I wanted to begin earlier today. We had some kind of misinformation about the network in general, and I just wanted to clarify a lot of that stuff. So, you can go over to Constellation's GitHub repo right now, and you can see that there is clearly Metagraph NFT examples. So maybe this is something that we're going to see during the hackathon, is somebody building an NFT marketplace using Metagraph technology. And then the other thing that was kind of addressed is this company that this guy had never heard of, Forward Edge AI. Well, Forward Edge AI is actually a pretty big deal within the Department of Defense, and they've already secured lots of contracts. And yes, Jerry, they are literally in space right now. This is a picture of the Berry 2 orbital robot. That's a real thing. These are Forward Edge AI's real chips that use neuromorphic quantum computing principles. And here is some real news articles talking about this satellite that went up in space. So, there's this is actually really happening. This thing is already actually up in orbit right now. And Forward Edge AI and their quantum computing capabilities has actually won them tons of different awards within the government. You can see their page here, and I can just start clicking these on random. So these are all different things that they have been awarded by the government for their technology. Going back specifically to some of the stuff that they're doing with space and that satellite, this talks about that orbital satellite and how it's being used. Here's their chip, right? And you can see all the big players here. This talks a little bit more about the chip and how they're able to do it at a fraction of the cost of everybody else. And this diagram here is pretty telling. I'll make it a little bit bigger here. But you can see Microsoft is involved in this, and lots of other space participants are involved in this. And going back to this working group, this space working group that's part of the National DigiFoundry, which, yes, Forward Edge AI is actually a part of. This DAG address, because remember, metagraphs are all independent layer 1 networks, and all of the metagraphs use a directed acyclic graph structure, and that's what gives it its ability to scale horizontally, or as some of these things will term, infinitely. This thing can keep scaling as long as nodes are added to the network. But if you take this DAG address, remember, it's not an internet computer address, Jerry. It's not even a Bitcoin address. It's not an Ethereum address or Solana address. It's a DAG address. And if you go here to this Explorer that can clearly put in any of these addresses, and you put in this DAG address that was on the other screen, you can see here, National DigiFoundry, and you can see the tokens. But some of this stuff isn't very public to the network, like the National DigiFoundry, which is on chain, and you can see the transactions happening, like with that NDT token that I showed you. That's anybody that takes at least 2 minutes of research can actually find for themselves publicly. There's there's some stuff like this that's a little bit more obscure, if you will, like their work that they're doing with U.S. Transcom and a subsidiary of that, CRAFT. So CRAFT is the Civil Reserve Air Fleet. And what they set up for them is they set up a private network. So all of this isn't public, but you can clearly see here from articles and demonstrations that Constellation has given about how the technology works and what they're doing. And so they're just verifying all of this data on chain. But there is other telling stuff that all of this is happening. Here's 𝗵𝗵𝗽. So 𝗵𝗵𝗽 is a partner of Iron Spider. They're another network. And this, again, goes towards this collaborative multi-chain effort that I really hope we're going to see happen more of during this hackathon. So 𝗵𝗵𝗽 is also a blockchain company, but they're partnering with Constellation to scale out this Iron Spider initiative. So I hope that cleared everything up and, you know, addressed some of the misconceptions there by Jerry. But I'd be happy to have Jerry on stage anytime and actually walk him through step by step everything that's actually there. And with me today, I have some members from the community, and we're going to be taking questions and actually diving into more excitement about this this Metagraph hackathon, which, like, I'm really excited for. I'm just not necessarily excited for all these like prizes and stuff. I'm more excited to see what kind of interesting use cases people are going to come up with from the development community.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, you know, I can't mention any metagraphs. If I mention a single one, I'm going to get in trouble for not mentioning every single one that exists. But I think the big question on my mind today is tomorrow the day that the first unicorn metagraph is born? Or maybe the first unicorn metagraph already exists. Maybe multiple unicorn metagraphs already exist, but I think there's a good chance that a unicorn metagraph idea is born tomorrow, and maybe multiple. And so that's really, really exciting. And for, you know, these stalwarts of industry like IBM, members of the National DigiFoundry, Panasonic, to have, you know, the ability to kind of see that innovation happening on the Constellation hypergraph and ideas leveraging the technological advantages of the hypergraph is just a really exciting thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's no telling. I mean, we could absolutely see the unicorn metagraph happen. I mean, all it's going to take is just one use case that takes everything viral. I mean, that's what's going to be really exciting to see is all these you know, like what people are developing, and I really hope to be covering as much of that as possible in the 8 weeks that the hackathon is actually going to take place.
Yeah, this is such a wonderful defining moment, I would say, for the Constellation ecosystem as well. And, you know, for those in the community that know me, like I've been here a long time, and getting to this point where we are now going to see this explosion of growth of building of metagraphs, and yeah, I agree. You know, seeing what comes out of this, and finally seeing that unicorn metagraph come to life that, you know, we've been talking about over the years that this you know, company's been in business. I'm so excited to see what comes out of this.
Okay. All right. That's why there wasn't really that many. Okay. So for those of you who are just joining now, there was a technical error. So the space has actually been going on for about 10 minutes. If you missed the first 10 minutes, you can go to YouTube. I just noticed that when I started the stream, for whatever reason, it didn't start broadcasting on X right away. So the broadcast, the first 10 minutes of the broadcast was actually done on YouTube. So for those of you, again, that missed the first 10 minutes of the space, it's on YouTube.
Maybe a quick catch up, because we were just talking about how excited we are about the hackathon and what it means for Constellation and the Metagraph. And, I kind of had an idea in my head of kind of how I think about it. And, there's been a lot of progress with the hypergraph that has, happened behind closed doors. And we've gotten, nuggets of information from Benjamin Diggles over time. Dagnum's been, sharing that information through time as well. Kind of letting the community know that real serious initiatives are being built, even if some of these metagraphs are private. And when I kind of think about this hackathon, for me, the sponsors we have, whether it's IBM, the NDF, Panasonic, it really kind of is a watershed moment. And the way I kind of think about it is, the NDF and all the work behind the scenes that Constellation is doing, I kind of view as almost like a Trojan horse to get the platform in front of really important people, in front of decision makers, in front of executives and board members at some major companies, and for them to be able to sit down and kind of see the innovation and how bright minds are going to leverage the advantages that the hypergraph has, like the horizontal scalability, feeless transactions depending upon frequency. It's a really exciting thing. And I kind of wanted to give, example of how I think about it. So I'm going to steal the screen here for a second, Dagnum. And let's see, I think, I have a problem with this because I have a Mac, and so I could go into my settings. So I'm going to just explain it, and, potentially it will do justice because I think it's simple for people to understand. If you think about, the PlayStation 2, it had a DVD player in it. And if you were to look at the adoption of the DVD, the PlayStation 2 came out in March of 2020. And the adoption of the DVD after that date just basically became a parabolic, market share story. And it's really powerful because I think if the DVD hadn't been included in the PlayStation 2, for a similar price as competing consoles at the time, and it didn't have that Trojan horse to get that better technology in front of people, I think there might have been, a very different adoption story of the DVD and a very different success story for Sony in terms of the DVD. I kind of view this hackathon as a way to kind of leverage all the work being done, on the private Metagraph side with Iron Spider, with the Defense Department, with some of these relationships, that aren't necessarily always able to be fully transparent to the community. And we're seeing that money is being put up not only to sponsor, but to kind of take part in this hackathon and kind of leverage, those relationships in a way that is explicitly going to help the kind of the public side of the hypergraph. And that is really exciting to me. And I'm not telling you this hackathon happens and, in 6 months, we're going to have, 100 new metagraphs. But I think if you can kind of zoom out and see that this is the first wave of these probably type of initiatives and what that's going to mean for the momentum and the entrepreneurial innovation on this platform, it's really, to me, an inflection point. And to steal, Bear's kind of comment, it's a watershed moment. And so really, really excited about what today means for Constellation and the ability to kind of show the strength of these relationships and what it means for the ecosystem at large.
No, I mean, you're exactly right. And, unfortunately, the first 10 minutes of this conversation wasn't really brought forward on X, but it was absolutely on YouTube. So anybody can rewatch that. But I'll sort of circle back and highlight what you were just referring to. So For those of you who don't know, all the Jerrys out there, this is Constellation's universal DLT kit that it built for the federal government, the Department of Defense, and U.S. Transcom is using it, and a subsidiary of that, the Civil Reserve Air Fleet. And as you can see, there's multiple stakeholders in it. 𝗂𝗵𝗶𝘀 also has a blockchain. They do secure data storage. 𝗁𝗵𝗃 is a blockchain that's separate from Constellation, but they're working together. CGI Federal also has developed their own chain, and all of these guys are working in unison for this distributed ledger technology piece that was rebranded into Iron Spider. And while we can't see this actual piece of this working publicly, like some of this stuff here that I shared earlier, that you can absolutely, Jerry, see this publicly. This is the National DigiFoundry Space Working Group. This is not a Dfinity address. This is a Constellation DAG address. And these metagraphs that are built on top of the hypergraph metagraphs are all independent layer 1 networks. And all it takes is 2 seconds of verification. And you can see that this address is the same address that's on the website, because you can copy and paste it yourself. And you can see here the NDT token, the National Digi token for the National DigiFoundry. Yeah, and so like what you were talking about with the milestones here, I don't know specifically like where they're at with the federal milestones. I know that what was it, in May, they just announced that they received another contract with the federal government, and it was back in December that I told everybody, because I've been following this stuff pretty closely, especially the stuff with the federal government. So back in December, Biden signed in the National Defense Authorization Act, and it unlocked almost $1 billion. And I read through that document. It was like 2,000 or 3,000 word document, and I found a lot of stuff that was completely applicable to the same stuff that Constellation is doing. And I told people, just by reading the document, the National Defense Authorization Act, I'll try to pull that up here in a second, just to show you the post. A lot of these things that were put out in the NDAA, once it was signed into law, people had around 120 days. Here we go. So here's the post from January. And so going through the document, you can read where Constellation sort of fits in with a lot of their stuff. Now, will we see some of this stuff on chain? Probably not, just like the stuff with Craft. But getting back to what Chris was talking about, and this sort of Trojan horse thing, is once the hypergraph gets NIST certified, you're not really going to have a choice but to use this solution, right? So it's not really about partnering with IBM or partnering with Microsoft or partnering with Panasonic, all of which, by the way, are working with Constellation. And it's not even about that. It's about this end-to-end security solution that they have made for the government being a standard. And when things are a standard, you don't really have a choice, right? And so then there's the Trojan horse. But from a broader community perspective and a public initiative, this hackathon is going to be a great showcase for people to get their hands and start building stuff. And why wouldn't you want to build your application on something that's already vetted and validated by the U.S. Department of Defense as a secure, scalable solution for your application. I mean, why wouldn't you? And like for all the diehard, people that are super tribalistic like Jerry, like why not try to broaden your community and instead of scraping the bottom of the barrel for maybe one more community member that hasn't heard of your thing, why not reach out to other communities and see how you can sort of coexist and collaborate? That's where I think we should be moving towards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, there's more than one programming language out there, right? Not everything is programmed in C. Not everything's programmed in Java. Not everything. I mean, there's a reason for that. There's strengths and weaknesses to different approaches. And, there's not one piece of hardware out there. We have a pretty big tectonic shift happening now where ARM processors are, finding themselves in data centers a lot more, whereas 5 years ago, ARM processors were for cell phones only or small, low-powered devices. And the reason that's important is I think there's a big ethos in crypto that I frankly don't agree with of we are going to rebuild the internet on platform XYZ. And that is unrealistic. It's not going to happen, in my opinion. Certainly not in probably any of our lifetimes. And so, well, how do we improve the system if we're not going to throw it all out and replace it? Well, by giving yourself exposure to these decision makers, these massive entities, they can say, we're not going to throw out everything we've been using for the last 50 years. And in some cases, these entities are using the same databases they've been using for that long. But we now see that this can solve several problems for us. Something like the hypergraph can be, way more secure, way more scalable, way faster finality than some of the systems we're using. And, a hackathon is a good way to, demonstrate how that solution can be used for different business problems. And I think that's really where, distributed ledger technology is going to shine by working with, a lot of these incumbent industries, solving problems for them, and step by step getting to a more equitable solution where, people can actually share in the protocols that kind of power the data and power, our systems. Whereas before that really wasn't the case. And so, look, I think that idea needs to mature within the distributed ledger space. And I think Constellation is one of those teams who has clearly gotten that. And there are others as well. And I think as a community, Constellation needs to be someone who demonstrates this is the right approach. And also, we're willing to work with you because there's probably some problems that Constellation can't do as well as other projects. But we can work together, we can interoperate, and we can provide a better solution, for these companies than we could on our own. The pie gets bigger, everybody wins, adoption accelerates. And that's exactly what you're seeing, on the private side. The Department of Defense didn't just come to Constellation and say, hey guys, do everything. No, they picked different entities who specialize in different things to solve those problems because they can do it the fastest. They can probably do it with the most confidence and get them the results. And that's the way it works. And I think, the term that has been coined that I like to use is competition instead of, competition. So cooperating with some competition and solutions as opposed to just competition.
It's funny, listening to you and Dagnum, because you guys are in my head this morning because I think that's a really, really important thing to keep in mind when we're talking about Constellation, especially for the wider community and distributed ledger technology at large, because ever since Constellation has been on the scene, they've been all about collaboration, right? There's been some joking about, competition, we're going to take over, whatever, but really the ethos of Constellation has always been about collaboration. I mean, even that the infographic you shared earlier, Dagnum, where you had the different the federal partners, right? That even when we were in there designing, working with the federal government, yeah, multiple partners and multiple entities within the distributed ledger space were brought in to kind of help build this whole thing together. And I know that, when you talk to some of the major members of Constellation, the founding members and so forth, right, all that they ever mention is collaborating. Yeah, right there. I mean, look at that, with 𝗂𝗵𝗶𝘀, 𝘁𝗵𝗽, like from the get-go, it's been all about collaborating to build an inner working system together. It's never been about one, major company here. Like they all work together in tandem. And so I think that's really, really an important point for, as you so eloquently put it, Dagnam, for all the Jerrys out there. I think it's a really important point to remember that we are all about collaboration, and the more that we have the opportunity to work together within the distributed within the DLT space, I think the better off we're going to be, because 𝘂𝗵, you hit the nail on the head when you were saying, like, we're not going to invent a new internet, right? We're not going to invent a new system, but we can enhance it. But I think the only way we can enhance it is if a lot of these companies are able to find their way out of tribalism and more into working together to build something that benefits all of humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think that also highlights the brilliance of kind of what Constellation has created by allowing metagraphs to be private or public, right? By having that kind of metagraph layer that's almost like this way, this easy way for someone in another community to kind of integrate within the Constellation ecosystem. Obviously, we know efforts are being had on kind of furthering the interoperability initiative, but even before that actually goes live, you have this ability to kind of build right on Constellation in whatever manner kind of best suits your current project. And that's something I know Dagnam's been trying to champion and trying to get more people involved to say, hey, look, like, build a metagraph, let's connect ourselves. And that's really would allow people to further tap the network effects of a much broader ecosystem. The bigger the network, the stronger the effects, the better for everyone.
Yeah, and it's not just with the federal and private side. I mean, look at the DREC alliance that Constellation joined, right? So you have Hedera, Algorand, Ripple, Casper. So I mean, there's no telling even from this little alliance what other alliances and multi-chain collaborations are going to happen from this. And that's only how you only get stronger by working together. It's kind of like the analogy of teaching, when you teach kids why working together is better than working separately. So you can take a stick by itself and you can break it pretty easily, right? But then you can get a whole bundle of sticks and put it together, and it almost makes it impossible to break. So, if you just try to go and do everything by yourself in a super tribalistic manner, you're going to find yourself isolated on an island all by yourself. And like what I was trying to point out to Jerry is, metagraphs, they just came online. So it hasn't even been a year yet that the first metagraph actually went live. But all of these things that are actually on chain right now on DFINITY, and most of these I actually use myself, because I love it. I mean, I love, here's OpenChat, for example. And OpenChat is a really great application that's built on DFINITY, and everything is on chain. All of these messages are on chain. All of this is stored on a smart contract. On DFINITY, it's called a canister. And it's great. It's an amazing application. It's easy to use. And what really makes it great is you don't actually need any crypto to actually use the application. But with metagraphs, somebody could actually build a similar application. So all of this stuff is absolutely possible to do. Just like going back to that DREC Alliance, I believe on Hedera's ecosystem, which has hundreds of apps that are live right now. I think that they have similar apps. But that's not really what it's about. I think that it's the wrong look to sort of try to compare different projects together, because you can't really compare people. Like one of the things that Jerry did that I see a lot of people do in comparisons, he compared Constellation with Casper. So yes, Casper and even Hedera, they're all sort of loosely based around similar architecture, which is the directed acyclic graph architecture. But there's big differences between how that technology is implemented. And if you would actually do some time, some due diligence, and some research into the stuff that you're talking about, you would know the difference. And you would know that Casper is actually like a store of value in the same way that Bitcoin is a store of value, but it's not really a network that's set up for putting applications on, right? Constellation's network from the very beginning was set up to build applications and run them as microservices. So there's big differences between the two. Just because something has a similar name and I guess the same sort of DNA, if you will, just because they're directed acyclic graphs, just like IOTA is a directed acyclic graph. And there's several other directed acyclic graphs in crypto, but that doesn't mean that they're all the same. So, I just think that that's where we all need to sort of head towards is, educating people so you can make informed decisions and not gaslighting and misinforming the community, because then you have to take a lot of time and try to unroll a lot of that misinformation. And unfortunately, because of his posts in general, there's probably a lot of people that just won't even watch this post, won't even watch this stream. Even though at the beginning of the stream, I spent 10 minutes at the very beginning of the stream in a very systematic way going through and debunking all of his misinformation about Constellation's technology and what they're doing. And that's not really what I want to do. I don't want to spend my time debunking somebody that hasn't done an ounce of research. I want to be talking about how we can collaborate together. And that's something that I've been actually doing for almost 2 years with Dfinity. I've set up spaces with them. I've actually got both teams to start communicating together. And, I really want to see more collaborative efforts between different communities, not bringing someone down just because you think that your bag is the best bag.
Now, you don't see people defending stocks the way they defend cryptos, right? It's pretty funny. I think one of the other things that just gets me really excited about kind of the hackathon and I need to study the Constellation tokenomics more, but from what I understand of them, it's a really interesting system where, what matters, the most important metric for, an ecosystem and that network effect is how many tokens are actually participating in the network, right? And as you kind of grow the metagraphs out over time, as this ecosystem grows, you're going to have more and more tokens locked up in metagraphs. And that creates a situation where you have less tokens available, in circulation that are going to need to be bought to pay for snapshots. And so it's a really like a good design and a way to kind of leverage the momentum of the ecosystem in a way that economically rewards, whether it's investors, whether it's builders, whether it's node operators. And so it's a really cool thing to kind of think about, because ultimately, as the platform grows, outside of already the compelling technological, opportunities that the hypergraph and solutions that the hypergraph offers, it becomes more compelling through time as a builder to choose the hypergraph based on the tokenomic system we have. And so that's a really interesting dynamic. And then it kind of also gets me excited because we could see some really powerful ideas, come out of the event, and what that could mean for the momentum of the community and kind of the place of the hypergraph in terms of trying to get to the most compelling solution for the next big ideas that happen down the line.
Yeah, and on the screen here that that Dagnum's going through, he was actually, again, man, get out of my head. The thing I started thinking of literally was our fees light paper, particularly as building on what you're talking about and seeing some of these exciting features come to life too. I know the where is it? Yeah, the snapshot fees, right, are another major part of that. So being able to see all of these, metagraphs building, tokens being locked up, and then on top of that, you're seeing more of the data moving on chain. And then as that data moves on chain and snapshot fees go live, now you've got another compounding effect coming in where you've got fees being burned and all that kind of stuff too. And it's just really exciting to see a lot of these features starting to come to life.
Yeah, I'm trying. Oh, here it is. I was trying to find the fee calculator, right? And so to give people like a perspective on everything that you guys are talking about. So for starters, Constellation peer-to-peer stuff is always going to be free. So it's always going to be free and feeless for me to send you guys however much DAG. I can send you 1,000,000 DAG right now in a fraction of a second, and it's all free. If somebody like Jerry would do more than talking and actually build something like an NFT thing, it will be free always for me to send an NFT to somebody, always. So, but where it scales out is these big data applications. And so this 50 kilobyte snapshot is always going to be free, but people can adjust the monthly costs and the snapshots, like how many snapshots your business is wanting to do. And so these enterprises right now can actually get an idea of how much it's going to cost. And so everybody's data use case is different, and there's different models. There's you can pay in DAG, or they have a pay in dollars, right, in fiat. Obviously, you're going to save a little bit more. I think it's a 10% fee reduction if you pay in DAG versus if you pay in fiat. But as we've seen other businesses implement a fiat pay structure, it's because still there's some enterprise people that just aren't comfortable with that, right? So you have people like Alchemy. I think a couple of days ago, I had that quantum computing network Dynex that's going to have enterprise or universities accessing their models, and if you want to, you can actually pay in fiat. But you can go back to this this tokenomics impact here, and they put out this sort of comical. I guess it sort of looks comical when you think about it from like a transaction standpoint. All these monthly transactions, and I'm trying to remember. I'll find it up here on the exact number it was, but it was like tens of millions of snapshots a month, right? So here it is, and so they gave this example of something like 54 million transactions a month, which sort of seems absurd, right? But when you think about the stuff that they're doing with the government, for example, and I've pointed this out many, many times over many, many years, they started working with the government in 2019. And back in 2019, US Transcom, that's the same people that they built that Metagraph for, and have that thing for the Civil Reserve Air Fleet, CRAF, which every major airline in America is part of. We're talking about American, Delta, United, FedEx, UPS. All these people are part of the Civil Reserve Air Fleet. But anyway, US Transcom back in 2019 was submitting something ridiculous like 2 terabytes a minute. So just wrap your noodle around that for a second. 2 terabytes a minute on that network. And that was in 2019. So something like 54 million transactions actually isn't out of the realm of possibility. And who knows, maybe they're already doing that right now with the Department of Defense. But this fee model right here, this shows everybody publicly like what it would cost. And so on Constellation's network, sending 54 million transactions a month would only cost you $3,800. If you did that on Ethereum, well, you can clearly see nobody in their right mind would be using Ethereum for that. But even other networks that are supposedly super low cost, Constellation actually beats them. Constellation beats Hedera in fees by several $1,000s, and it is half the cost of Solana. So
what's the cost if Solana goes down for 48 hours?
Yeah, and then you have that, right? You can't risk your network going down, right?
Yeah, that's the important thing is, and this is a very clean, example of the Constellation hypergraph advantage, but there's multiple factors to consider, and sometimes you have to realize, for these systems that are so enormous. And the use cases are kind of hard to fathom, I think, for the crypto space, right? They're very likely going to be private DLTs or private metagraphs. And so you have to kind of understand that to kind of go after these whale use cases, at least initially, and where distributed ledger technology is in terms of the mind space of decision makers. The argument would be, without the ability for Constellation to offer these private metagraphs, would they even be in that room, right? And so that's really important to understand. I can give you another example of one. I think it was, SIA-Net that Quant was involved with, basically through 𝗏𝘃𝗀 in 2019. SIA, and if you're not familiar, SIA is like a banking technology company that does banking for central banks, but then also all the banks in Italy and a lot of banks globally. I think they did more transactions in terms of number of transactions, not nominal value, than the entire crypto space in 2019. This is one banking entity. They're not related to SWIFT, they're a competitor there. The size of some of these institutions is enormous. And so when you kind of think about, the cost per transaction is absurdly low, you also have to understand the size of some of these entities and their data needs and the amount of transactions they would have, should they adopt a solution like the hypergraph. And we're clearly seeing that take place as, the information trickles out, what we are able to confirm. You're never going to be able to sit there and probably read the hashes for the Department of Defense, but slowly but surely, contracts after they're signed are made public, things of that nature. And so, it's really important to understand the scale of this and why it's so powerful, but then also that the cost itself is only kind of one component of that decision making. And you're not necessarily even competing with other DLT solutions that might be in the ballpark on cost, but are nowhere near the scalability, the reliability, the security, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean you're exactly right. We got blockchain basement in the house.
Hello. What up? Yeah. What's up, guys?
What up? And real quick before blockchain basement jumps in, I'm just gonna digress there for a second off of what Chris was saying. So let's just forget about the for a second, just for 1 second, and pretend like it doesn't matter that the United States Department of Treasury, yeah, you heard me, the United States Department of Treasury actually has a Metagraph, and somebody there has a Stargazer wallet. Let's just forget about that and pretend like it doesn't happen. You know, one thing that I've dealt with for a couple of years talking about Constellation's technology and, you know, the payment stuff and is, look, you know, you've got Mike Siegel, the president of ISO 2020. You know, he is an advisor to Constellation. So, you know, it's just it's laughable to me, this whole thing. What's up, Drew?
What is up, fellas? Thanks for letting me give me the invite here. I'm super excited to talk to you about this project. Honestly, I've been holding this project for years. And some of the comments are kind of making me laugh. You know, a lot of people are thinking that the Solana meme coins, you know, are going to be the better play. And maybe in the short term, we see those things go nuts. But look around at the world around us. Look at how important data is. Look at all of the steps that the United States is going through to secure their data and the evolution of literal warfare and transportation of goods. Everything, like, data is the new gold. And I'm a heavy prepper. I like to make sure that things are controlled. I used to work within the power industry in Northern Colorado, and I got a glimpse of just how immense the data security systems are in the United States. And it's very, very exciting to even have a glimpse into the future of how these systems are going to be organized. Like, that's the biggest conversation for me. Everyone's always chasing these massive pumps, and you know, the pumps are great and everything like that, but they go away. And we saw, you guys are talking about Solana going down. I feel like it's just this migratory pattern within crypto where they'll flow from Solana to AVAX. When they flowed to AVAX real quick, AVAX went down too. A lot of these systems are failing their stress tests. Yes, they're cool. They're great little layer ones, but until the literal data infrastructure, the roadway for data to move is built, these Ferrari type layer ones that everyone's so excited about are not going to be able to be fully implemented across the world. And that's really where I feel like I found something special with Constellation DAG a few years back. And obviously, you know, we're in the kind of, I have a question for you guys. Did you guys see that Ben Goertzel, the Twitter account? I don't know if it's confirmed if it's been hacked, but Ben Goertzel is one of the top AI scientists in the world. And even just the basic Twitter account of his looks like it's been compromised for days on end. Did you guys see any of that, any conversation breaking out about that? Because it makes me feel a little uncomfortable. You know, I love Ajax, I love Singularity and the project itself, but, you know, seeing that data breach potentially is happening right now, not being addressed, like, how can we trust that, you know, these private entities are going to be able to pull off real data security? That's why I feel like the power of DAG and the acceptance it's finding within our literal, you know, government entities is so much more sound for the long term. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's so many things that are fly by the night. They're here, you know, for a few months. We had that big AI pump. Now things are starting to cool down. But do you think that, you know, the actual implementation of these AI type systems is going to happen this cycle? I feel a lot of people are wondering if that's going to happen this cycle. I still am of the opinion that we have a few years of testing and building out this infrastructure first.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's going to happen, you know, maybe sooner than people think. I mean, just look at how advanced the AI systems are getting just in the past year. And to piggyback off of what you're talking about, you know, we're going to need security. We're going to need a way to validate all of that stuff, and that's actually something that that the government is working and testing, specifically utilizing Constellation's technology. I'll pull back up that National DigiFoundry. For me, that this thing is like, if you want to get like a lens into actually what's happening. This national DigiFoundry is a good thing. I was trying to pull up another post that I had from Larry Ellison, talking about how he envisions a day in the not too distant future where every government will have its own sovereign AI cloud infrastructure, right, to protect itself. And it's like, bro, like they're already doing that. Yeah.
I mean,
So
I just had to bring it up because I worry about 99 red balloons being recreated in our current situation, seeing these AI systems pump out deep fakes, and now we're in this geopolitical tension. And where is the verification systems, put in place? Like, that's what we need. We need to be able to verify what's real, especially. I mean, honestly, it's always important, but I feel like the time frame we're in right now in the United States, it's kind of, I think that's got the fire lit under a couple toes right now to get it happening.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of good points and some different points there, right? Certainly the validity of data is core to what Constellation has been working to build and has successfully built, as we see with the adoption for years. And, on top of that, there's also the question that you kind of asked of, like, when does kind of AI really start to impact our lives more dramatically than it already is, and it already is having an impact. There's some very different schools of thought on that, but one thing I would point to, first let me say, I am not an AI expert, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, but one thing I would say that points to the legitimacy of this happening sooner than some people expect is just the insane amount of CapEx that the largest companies in Silicon Valley are pumping into this. And the way it's been described to me, and I can't verify this, I haven't had these conversations, with these companies directly, but my understanding is, why is like Amazon and Google and Apple and these companies spending obscene amounts of money? And if you're not sure how much they're spending, just pull up a chart of NVIDIA's revenue. That's basically what you need to see. My understanding is they are spending this so fast because they are seeing what it can do for their own internal business. And that's a very different path of adoption to, for example, the internet, where really, when you think about most of the internet Goliaths, if you will, dominant players today, they're monetizing consumer data, right? Not everyone. I mean, Amazon's running a business, but it's business to consumer, right? Google's monetizing individual data. That's one of the big tenets of distributed ledger technologies, is to give individuals that power back over their data, right? Apple's doing the same thing. I mean, if you think they're not monetizing your data, whatever they say about data security, I don't have proof or anything. I don't want to throw stones, but I'm pretty sure all of these guys are monetizing individual user data every single way they can. And with AI, although that likely happens, you have individual AI and things of that nature, there is just such a surface area to attack on the business front, and even business to business. It makes it really hard to kind of think about that event horizon where this really, the adoption accelerates and becomes undeniable. And I don't think we've hit that point yet, from what I can gather. Certainly we're seeing a lot of building in the background, a lot of money being spent, but you're not hearing about whole divisions of companies being laid off and replaced with, omnipotent systems. So it's a really interesting question. I wish I had a more coherent answer for you, but hopefully I kind of touched on, at least some of the things I'm hearing and some of the ways that it makes it hard for people to kind of model and wrap your heads around, because it's a different trajectory of adoption, or where it touches society is slightly different than, some of these things we've seen in the past, whether it was the radio, the personal computer, the internet. But one thing we do know is, if and when that adoption soars, the data going in and the data coming out of these systems, its importance only grows and probably grows exponentially.
Yeah, and you're to tie into exactly like what you and Drew are both talking about. You know, here's that company that you know, Jerry couldn't take the 2 seconds and do some due diligence. You know, just because Forward Edge AI only has a couple hundred followers on Twitter doesn't mean that they're not a legitimate company that does lots of business and literally has tens of millions of dollars in government contracts. Here's one that talks about exactly what we're talking about, spotting these fake anonymous actors online and how you stop it, right? And oh, look at that. That's Microsoft Azure that's being integrated with this technology. So, you know, this stuff absolutely is being used and it's being tested right now. I can pull back up again that you know, this National DigiFoundry. That's again, it's like a window into what's happening, right? And so you have all of these participants, including NASA, Space Force, the Defense Innovation Unit, U.S. Treasury Department, the Department of Education, you know, all of these people, but they're absolutely using these systems and implementing blockchain into these systems because blockchain is, you know, proof. So you can validate at the source in real time that something is true and accurate, right? And so you don't want these threat vectors coming in and augmenting your systems, right? I mean, that could be super duper dangerous, especially when it goes up into like these space systems, right? You don't want somebody mucking around with your code and changing it to sabotage it, especially if you're talking about these autonomous robots like that satellite thing that I pointed out at the beginning of this stream. You know, AI needs blockchain. I mean, period.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we're entering an era, and AI personifies this the best, right? But we're entering an era where more and more decisions are going to be made from data that humans never look at or touch, by systems that humans are not directly involved with, and you know, making decisions that have bigger and bigger outcomes on our economies, you know, our lives, right? And so data is what connects all that. And so, you know, if we're going to put our trust in further and further automation of decision making, we have to believe in the data sources that, you know, where it comes from is where it's supposed to come from, that what arrives at the, you know, black box that makes the decision is what left the sensor or what left the data set or what left the source, and what leaves the decision-making computation, you know, wherever it needs to go, it's not tampered on the way out, and it arrives, you know, in good shape. And that's, it's just going to become more and more important. And that's why these massive entities are all, you know, so involved in technology in a way that, you know, in my lifetime, I don't recall seeing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Go ahead, Drew.
Well, I mean, this just, you said it impacts our lives. It does. Like just on Friday, they came out with the, you know, news articles highlighting how every single AT&T phone record and text was hacked during 6 months, at least 6 months during 2022. And they didn't decide to report it until about April this year to the SEC. And then us, the public, were left holding the bag and finally finding out about this information now across the mainstream media. Like, this impacts our lives in a very direct way. And that's where it's like super exciting for me because, you know, yeah, there's a lot of turmoil, but there's also a lot of good happening, like NVIDIA's earnings. You brought that up. And I've also heard a lot of reading between the lines that I've taken in from conversations listening to Larry Fink, I feel like they're setting up for the next great new deal where they build out data center infrastructure across the United States and really kind of bring that more into a national focus, because they see that they can't really have everything open door to Russia, China, everybody. Obviously, conflict eventually came to fruition, right? And so I think that it's an exciting time for me in America, because there's a lot of worry out there, but essentially I feel like we're just going to be restarting the Great New Deal in a technological fashion and building out these data center capacities, which in turn creates jobs and will really be great for, I used to hire for construction, and it'd be great to see the heavy industrial data center construction industry wake back up in a big way. I think that's, I'm looking at, nuclear facilities and data centers as far as what's tangibly going to be the real squeeze on industrial building here.
Yeah, and you're seeing, a big chunk of this fiscal spend by the United States, whether you love it, whether you hate it, is kind of being plowed right back into that. And, there's multiple constraints, whether it's power generation, whether it's workers to build these facilities, but a lot of people don't recognize that the US data center market is larger than the rest of the world combined already. And that's before this AI wave. It's hard to fathom. I mean, we're 300, 40, 50, whatever it is, million people in the United States out of 8 billion. And, our data center infrastructure is the largest in the world, larger than the rest of the world. You see people make those kinds of comparisons with like the size of the U.S. Department of Defense compared to other countries, but I don't think, it's probably maybe not as common knowledge, just how powerful our technological infrastructure is, and let's say inferior quality of our roads and bridges and a lot of our other infrastructure gets a lot of headlines, but people tend to gloss over the superiority of American technological infrastructure. And it's something that I'll close the comment with this. You kind of mentioned being optimistic and kind of looking at all the good things going on. There's a common saying in the market, and I don't know who originated it, so I'm just going to paraphrase here. But bears or pessimists sound smart, optimists make money.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's what it is, man. I mean, it's like you have to have conviction. You have to know what you know and then go down that road. I knew slight amounts of the need for data security, and really beyond that, I was involved with the construction craze of the mixed use 3A buildings. I saw the ebb and flow of commercial developers, but the industrial and the data center sector stayed rock solid, and it continues to stay rock solid. And then, I could chalk this up to a tug of war over Taiwan, and the infrastructure to build out chips, but we can produce them here. It's just a matter of, if we're willing to work with the EPA and those guidelines. That's a big question in my mind, is if the EPA is going to keep the same requirements for our production in the United States, should this need to produce increase? That's a question in my mind I'm left with.
Yeah, and speaking of the chip stuff that you're talking about, this slide that I have on presented right now, I mean, this in a roundabout way is talking about everything that Constellation has been talking about and is doing with the federal government. And there's actually an audio clip. I played this the audio clip the other day, but they're talking about data provenance, right? And being able to track these things in real time. And this is something that they've actually been doing with the government for quite a while. And that's the other thing that people need to understand is, yes, I get it. All the degens, they want this thing deployed like right now, but Constellation went after something. They went after a bigger play. It's exactly like what Chris's analogy of Sony and the Blu-ray player, the Trojan horse, right? they went after the long game. And so there will be a point in time when this is all approved. The government just works a little bit slow, but there will be a point in time when all of this stuff is a standard. And when things are a standard, you don't have a choice. And so, yeah, it's not really about working with IBM or Microsoft or Panasonic or all these big players that they're actually partnered with. It's about having a standard that everybody's going to have to use, whether you like it or not.
Absolutely. And something I would kind of mention back to the kind of data center analogy, something that's unique about, enterprise adoption that's different than a lot of the Web3 or crypto space, which is frankly retail focused, which is why we have these huge boom and bust cycles as kind of new users flood in, money pours into the space, but then eventually the user growth kind of peters out because it always comes in waves. And then the industry rolls over because people aren't making 30 transactions on Ethereum anymore, flipping NFTs or what have you. But what's different about enterprise adoption, and I'll getting back to data centers, use that as an example of like what you saw from data center demand during COVID. Part of it, yes, is that a lot of people were working from home that weren't before. And so the need for that infrastructure grew. But another thing that's really compelling about enterprise demand is that usually you are either improving the revenue for a company, so you're growing their business faster, but oftentimes you're actually reducing their expenses. So when the economy hits a slowdown, you actually see that cost-saving technology, the adoption of that accelerates. And that's exactly what you saw with data centers in COVID, is that, oh, I have this rack of servers in my office space. I'm probably going to have to upgrade them in 12 months. That's a huge expense. I can just flatten out that expense and pay Amazon, and we can just go to the hyperscaler and use their technology. That smooths out my cost, makes it predictable. I don't have to hire people to monitor those servers all the time. And so there are parallels here with what Constellation is doing and building, in the sense that, going back to kind of what Dagman was talking about in terms of the cost per transaction, it's not even what it compares to Solana, Ethereum, however, it compares to what they're using currently. And if it saves them money, if budgets kind of flatten out or get cut, you're more actually apt to accelerate the adoption of that cost-saving technology. And that's something that's really powerful for a lot of the utility tokens and enterprise space in Web3, and certainly Constellation and the Hypergraph and what they're trying to build.
Yeah, and if you look at, so this is a graphic from Oracle, right? So remember, like this was years ago when Oracle had this, I think this was 10 years ago, actually, this little factoid from Oracle. So around 10 years ago, Oracle was doing 19 billion transactions every single day. Now, I mean, realistically, like if Oracle moved on to the Hypergraph and built a Metagraph, would they be putting their whole thing on there? No, because Metagraphs are microservices. But even if it's a fraction of that, I mean, you can see clearly, and this goes back to that little slide that I was showing about the cost comparison of the 54 million transactions a month. So that's a fraction of the daily thing that Oracle was doing. But even on a monthly cost, you can clearly see that, I mean, yeah, nobody in their right mind would use Solana for 54 million transactions a month. And when you compare Solana and Hedera to Constellation, you can clearly see Constellation is still the cheaper solution. So, I mean, more and more businesses are going to become aware of this. And it was actually, I was surprised. Let me see if I can see this post from Constellation themselves about the Panasonic partnership, which was really exciting to me. This post right here, right? So Panasonic is partnering in the event right? And it says here, initially, Panasonic joins Metagraph the hackathon to gain visibility, right? And to monitor and analyze the DAG distribution of their TVL, right? But then it says throughout the hackathon and afterwards, Constellation and Panasonic will be examining developer situations leveraging blockchain technology that may be in line with future Panasonic products and services. And if you look at Panasonic, even from a government level, and I talked about this the other day with 𝗂𝗏𝗀, who's an Oracle architect. He's also in the Fort Worth, Texas DAO that's examining Metagraph usage, right? But you have Panasonic Toughbooks that are integrated on a city, state, and just local level with different departments. You've got the energy departments, you've got law enforcement, all using Panasonic products. So you can sort of see where this thing is going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important that you can do this in a manner where your costs are in fiat, right? Like that's really important. It lowers, look, I think anyone listening to this, obviously all three of us, four of us, we are, DLT enthusiasts. We like the technology, but I think for mass adoption of the technology, the current interfaces are insufficient. And so from a business standpoint, being able to pay in, fiat and not, look, you can pay in DAG and get a discount, but maybe you don't want that headache today. You don't want to have to worry about if a crypto token is up 50% in 3 weeks, because that happens. That predictability is really important. But something else that makes Constellation's hypergraph somewhat unique is actually away from the enterprise side and more on the retail side. If you wanted to build a retail app, you can spend some time coming up with your own interface. And because most likely the nature of the transactions of your clientele are going to be completely free, it would actually be the entity, the corporation, or the business and their metagraph, which would have to deal with snapshots. You can do it in a way where a user creates an account and automatically behind the scenes, there's a 𝗙𝗪𝗀𝗀 wallet, right? Maybe they just have to look somebody up on their phone. You said if somebody on your phone, you know their phone number, right? You send them a link to pay them some money or give them whatever product it is. If they don't have a 𝗙𝗪𝗀𝗀 wallet, they tap something and one's made in the background and tied to their phone number. They don't even know it. There's these types of systems that could help ease the burden of the current Web3 interface. And because on a lower frequency way and anything peer-to-peer, Constellation's feeless, you get all the benefits of easing that kind of interface and easing that adoption for a retail consumer who might not want any of the kind of headache of trying to understand what's happening behind the mouse, behind the computer screen, but does want the benefits or wants a product that leverages the benefits of what Constellation's building. And so that's a really powerful thing. And I'm excited to see if we see some of that, in this hackathon tomorrow, if anyone's kind of trying to leverage those aspects that are unique of this platform.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And going through this Panasonic document that I kind of went through a little bit the other day, I mean, they're talking about, what is that, like 27 billion connected devices next year. And, Panasonic has a whole, it has tons of IoT devices. Not only that, but they're a lot of industrial equipment that uses Panasonic equipment. But to go back to what you were talking about, on these maybe small to medium-sized businesses, I kind of hit on that the other day because, yeah, Panasonic's great, IBM's great, Microsoft is great. All these big Fortune 100 companies that are in Constellation's sort of sphere are great, but what a lot of people might not be aware of is this $105 trillion economy that just happened last year, and it's actually going to be bigger this year. 70% of that is made up to small and medium-sized businesses. And if you just focus in for a second on the United States, right? You know, if we talk about it from a small to medium-sized business perspective, these people that could be potentially utilizing and implementing Metagraph technology, that's about $18 billion. Now, I mean, is Constellation going to capture all of that $18 billion? No, but they only need 1% of that. 1% of that is a huge number, right? And that's only one little use case, maybe. And so, yeah, I mean, people just aren't
Absolutely.
really thinking too much about how all of this stuff is going to happen. And all it's going to take is one trigger, one snowball. And maybe during this hackathon, somebody's going to come up with some crazy application, some crazy use case that's going to, you know, be that aha moment for somebody and be like, oh, that is genius. Like, I should do something like that. I mean, even as something as you know, simple as this packet token that I tried to explain to people that they didn't really necessarily see the value in, you know, but you know, this little packet token actually isn't, what you can do with this token isn't possible on any other network, period. It gets multiple data from different points simultaneously, and then it rewards people for engagement. So like right now, specifically how somebody can earn a packet token is by setting up a wallet, initiating swaps, or being on a wait list. Okay, great. But how does that help somebody like, you know, Wendy's? Well, I mean, so like if Wendy's was interested in expanding its user base, it could do free airdrops of Wendy tokens to everybody in the next 5 minutes. If you can get a free double if you go to this specific Wendy's, because it knows where you're at because of your phone, right? So if you go to this specific Wendy's in the next 5 minutes, you will get a free double. Boom, here's the tokens. Or Drew could be like in line, bro, I'm in Wendy's right now. I don't have
I'm there.
Yeah,
I'm there,
I don't
baby.
have any of these Wendy's tokens. And I'm like, bro, I got you. Boom. There
Dude,
you go.
that's I'm in. You know, they could tell Tractor Supply, get a deal on chicken food. They give me some, you know, cheap tokens. Go get some chicken food. I'm speeding there. You know, and that's like the value of data. It's compounding because they get to aggregate the information of what the consumer is going to buy, and then they can pinpoint the consumer's interest and then absolutely multiply profits. And if, you know, people don't see how companies and major corporations are going to absolutely focus on harnessing this over the next 10 years, like, you're kidding yourself. You're absolutely kidding yourself. And what have they spent the last 20 years doing? They've been aggregating every single person's data. Now, if you mention something with your phone next to you, it shows up, right? So we're seeing this slow buildup of this. And, you know, I've been paying attention to it for years. You know, I'm very interested. I'm going to be at Bitcoin Nashville. I'm excited to hear what Trump's take is on Bitcoin and crypto in general, because it needs that aha moment for the average person to really get this light going off in people's brains about what's coming to the world, because it's already been happening in the background and we've only been dealing with the results of it, like that AT&T hack, right? But really, they can see the leverage that these corporations are going to get from having your purchasing history, your purchasing intentions, and what's to come, and they're going to aggregate that to pinpoint you into the right spots for their profits. It's just how the world works. It's, you know, it's unfortunate if it's a company you dislike, but honestly, if I get an advertisement that's pinpointed to me for chicken food half off, I'm speeding there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want that information. So yeah, man, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, but I mean, not only that, but I mean, you can sort of scale it out to different use cases, and you can get into the bartering aspect, right? Like, you know, maybe you've got all these chicken points, you know, but I've got, you know, like Delta Airlines, right? And I'm like, okay, I'll trade you free chicken for a year for one flight.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right.
And that's a parallel economy that we always talk about here in crypto. We wondered what it's going to look like, right? It's fermenting under our feet. It's I feel like most of my job is just trying to explain to the person next to me, my neighbor, the average person, because the average person's not into crypto. You know what I mean? They don't see what's coming. The same thing everyone was calling the internet a fad, right? We called many, many things a fad that we don't understand. When the pen was invented, those were witches for a while, right? If you're able to write down information and transcribe it to someone else, you're a witch. So, it's just, we're in that moment, that transformative moment. And, I wake up every day and put my boots on, just trying to find a new way to get the average person to open up their mind to what's coming. Because the other option is just to leave your money in fiat and watch them print it into dust, basically. So,
yeah, and hopefully
Yeah, the
some
one
of
thing.
this. Oh, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. The one thing I want to highlight too that I want to draw attention to is, what Dagan was just talking about with the packet token when you're talking about drawing that data in from multiple sources, right? And I think that one little concept alone, you can build an entire different metagraph off of, for example, building it with AI, where you're creating kind of this one thought that came to mind while I was listening to you guys was creating a secure and collaborative like AI training data marketplace, right? Where you're creating this secure, decentralized marketplace for buying, selling, training AI models on all this high quality data. And so where you would be basically like contributing this labeled and secure data sets for specific tasks, like medical images, financial data, etc. And then you're using Constellation or even concepts from this packet token, right, for secure data transfer, privacy preservation, and then being able to kind of leverage that tech and the interoperability to access data from various sources and so forth and so forth. And so just kind of seeing what's coming from all of this and listening to what you guys are talking about, it's just it's amazing. And that's why, just tying all of this back into what's kicking off tomorrow with the hackathon, these are some of the things and solutions that I'm hoping that we see come to life.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say briefly, I feel like I've been talking too much, but you kind of mentioned the frequent flyer miles. Like, hopefully some of this results in a better outcome for consumers too. Like, I can think about, you have like these alliances, these airline alliances, like the Star Alliance. Right now, like the frequent flyer mile situation, anytime you touch those miles, you try to transfer them, all this nonsense, like you're getting hit by big fees. How much better would it be for consumers if they could, any airline that's in the Star Alliance, you get this, NFT. And it works on all of our airlines because we're already cooperating in the marketplace. So would that create a situation where people actually travel more because the fungibility of those points, it's worth a lot more if you can travel on all these different airlines who might have better rates on certain routes. And so, like, I'm hoping, as we were talking about the optimism, that a lot of this ends up, in this kind of symbiotic relationship between business and individual or client, where they can grow their business faster by actually improving the outcome for the individual or for the client, the consumer. And so that's a really exciting thing as we kind of venture down this path as well.
No, you're exactly right. And not only from like an end user perspective, but once these businesses find out that they can scale out their applications seamlessly with zero friction at a fraction of the cost of something that they're already doing, I think you're going to see people jump hand over foot right into. And if you go back to Drew's example here about AT&T and getting hacked, I mean this thing actually wasn't an isolated incident, right? I mean, throughout the past year, we've seen multiple businesses become susceptible to this type of stuff, right? We just had what was it, a couple of weeks ago, the Snowflake breach, and companies just aren't going to be putting up with this kind of stuff for very long, right? And so as companies become more aware that there's actually a better solution, that they can do all of the same things that they're already doing already, but in a cryptographically secure manner, where nobody can actually hack their records because it's all on an immutable ledger, I think it's going to go off like gangbusters.
I completely agree with that. God, I'm sitting here distracted. I was just thinking about, I'm eating sourdough that's got 1,000-year-old starter in it. And I'm just imagining if they had this on the blockchain, you know what I mean? And like verifying. And I used to be in a heavy metal band for like 10 years. I've toured around. And when I saw NFTs first come out, I was like, wow, this is super exciting. Maybe we could give people NFT tickets and stuff. But then you get into the cost and, you know, the infrastructure you have to put into it. And that's really what turned my band off to doing it. You know, they weren't really willing to do so because we realized the amount of cost. And, you know, having that ability to lower the fees for those non-fungible, you know, tokens or representations, I think is really exciting, honestly, because I'm an artist as well, and thinking about what that can do for the artist. You know, they're not these huge corporations with a bunch of money that they can just slap down for an Ethereum transaction. There needs to be a better way to do it. And that's what I'm always looking for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, you know, when I first got into crypto and I first heard of these NFTs, instantly what popped into my head was the utility, and specifically from an artist standpoint like yourself, because I was like, bam, you know, you hear people like Taylor Swift getting angry with, you know, people like Apple siphoning off of all of her royalties, right? And, you know, she was suing, you know, record companies and whatnot. Well, okay, a simple solution to that is she could create her album as an NFT, put it out there. You know, you could even have, you know, fractionalized ownership of this album. But even beyond that, like what you're talking about specifically as an artist gaining royalties, every single time that NFT is sold or transferred, you can get a piece of that.
Yes. Yes. And that is what the hope that I saw in it was, because like we had millions of plays in Russia and all Brazil. We were getting played like crazy, but then we got the paychecks from Spotify. They give you a fraction of a penny per play, or it's just a very, very small amount of money for millions of listens. And you pour your heart and your soul into this over years' time, and then basically you're left with nothing. And record deals, I mean, those are just over exaggerated loans that are due back within a certain time frame. They're the artist and you know, art with the physical art, but also music artists, because I'm thinking in that realm they need to be better taken care of or have a way to monetize themselves in a more reasonable manner than right now, or it's all just going to be AI. Well, I got some children popping up behind me.
Oh, showtime. But no, you're exactly right. And even beyond that, right? So like look at the events, and you know, we have the whole thing with Ticketmaster. So Ticketmaster is being sued by the government for their monopoly. And you know, Ticketmaster, a lot of people aren't aware of it, but Ticketmaster actually scalps a lot of their tickets. And then they sell the tickets like on a third party. And so that's where you have these prices for instance, like Taylor Swift. You know, it's maybe a couple $100, and then the next day, bam, it's like thousands of dollars for a ticket, which is ridiculous. And that doesn't
Yep.
help. That doesn't help anybody but Ticketmaster.
Yep. And you as an artist, you have to deal with the angry customers. That's like yelling at you in the comments, like, what the heck? You know what I mean? Like, I just wanted to see you. Now I'm having to pay $500 for a seat. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hope that we can see rolled out with this. We need fast, secure, cheap transactions on a rock solid network that, you know, and we see, I honestly, like I have Solana. I even have a good bag of ICP. I have a good bag of DAG. What Jerry, you keep mentioning Jerry, he's so tribalistic. You can't see that this is a massive ecosystem that we're trying to roll out and implement into humanity. And there's room for quite a bit of different systems to find their specified use case. You just have to have a focus within that use case and the right connections, the right BD team, the right movements within the market to really capture it. Like, it's not all winner takes all in this world at all. And that money graph, that layout of how much $100 trillion economy, that is a great visual representation of what is happening right now. You don't need $100 trillion Solana market cap. You know, you're not going to get that. That's not going to happen, but you are going to find little pockets of use case for Solana, probably ICP, and especially DAG. And that's where the exciting part of it for me is, you know what I mean? It's about being a part of a literal change to humanity and the ground that we walk upon and talk upon.
Yeah, and it's just unfortunate, when I see comments like that, especially when I'm out there like trying to build ecosystems together, like with ICP, right? So Jerry, if he would have done his 2 seconds of due diligence, he could have realized that he has this little community in ICP, but one way that you could use Constellation's technology, the 𝗚𝗵𝗽𝘁 token specifically, is he could set up an 𝗚𝗵𝗽𝗁 metagraph and reward people for following him or joining his internet computer community, right? And people could get these tokens, and what they do with the tokens or what he decides to do with the tokens, I mean, that's up to him. But I mean, that's just an example use case of how you could have a collaborative effort between two different ecosystems. So instead of like competing against each other, you could take the best of both of them, right? And internet computers specifically, one advantage that they have is their smart contracts. These canisters can store a vast amount of data on them. Constellation's network, it allows people to build applications, layer one networks on top of it, but storing the data is a different issue, because they're more of like a conduit, like data conduit. So they have this secure end-to-end data infrastructure. So maybe tomorrow we'll see somebody from the internet computer community build some sort of storage solution for metagraphs, possibly. And to answer this guy's question about the NFT side of things, so there currently isn't anything official built out on the network, but what they did do is on the public repo, because remember, there's their development resources and their development time are only geared towards things that they want to finish out in the near term, and most of the work actually has been revolved around the stuff that they're doing with the Department of Defense, but all of that stuff has a ripple effect into the public community, like swaps, even the fee stuff. But so here's the NFT example. So anybody that has any development background can go to Constellation's GitHub right now and go into this NFT example and implement an NFT metagraph. So that is absolutely possible. Maybe tomorrow we'll see somebody use this example and tweak it into their own example.
God, I'm just reading through all this. There's so much being built out on this, man. And really where we're at right now in the market, I think people, they're just looking for that. I mean, I think that, data developers, obviously they're always in the trenches, but the speculators, they're looking for that 1000x overnight. And Rome wasn't built in a day. They just got to keep in mind, like kind of what you hinted at. It's like the government moves slow, and to make it through, the type of developments and checks that DAG has been going through takes years on end. And, a lot of people that don't have patience are going to be shaken out. They're going to be wondering what the heck's going on if they're not paying close enough attention. That's just the biggest thing for me. You have to live and breathe crypto to really find that next big thing. And, we're on position. I have ICP and DAG, and I'm not a maximalist on ICP. I try not to be a maximalist on anything. I'm a seasonal crypto enthusiast, right? I'm insulated to Bitcoin as I know we're going into the bear. And then I come out of hibernation. Once I saw things start to turn around and we hit that production cost for Bitcoin, that's when I opened up my gates. Once again, I'm a seasonal Bitcoin maxi. And then I come back into the market, and I'm again, a hillbilly-ish prepper person, I guess you could call me that. I live in northwestern Georgia. I got chickens and all this stuff. But doing this is basically, it's really been an eye-opener to see that we're not stuck to just the 9 to 5. We're not stuck to just trying to make it barely by. There is potential to be, early on something like a note to AT&T in 1910. That's what this feels like to me. You know what I mean?
No, you're exactly right. And I love Internet Computer. I've been using this stuff for a couple of years now. Again, like here's my Internet Computer open chat community, and just to show everybody. Here, I think this was the screenshot here of our presentation right now. And so I'm going to put this on chain so everybody sees now. So this is immortalized, I guess, forever on chain. And that's amazing to me. Like, that's super cool that we just did this live. I put a picture on chain in a group chat that's on chain. That's awesome to me. And you can tip people in here with currency. You can send people currency. You can even swap currency, all within just this little app, this open chat app. I mean, that's amazing to me. I love it. I love Internet Computer and all the things that they're providing and all the things that they're doing. You want to talk about getting other ecosystems to work together. They have on-chain native Bitcoin. They have Ethereum. I even think that they're working on Link and Doge integrations.
Yep.
I mean, Internet Computer is doing some amazing things. And I just want to see more collaboration, because that's how we're going to get pushed forward and how we're going to get, everything going exponentially is not by siloing your communities, but actually opening up your communities to other communities. This cross-pollination of ideas and things, right? It's like,
that's how the best stuff's built, man. You take advice, you find out what's not working, what is working, open lines of communication. Like, that's exactly how we have to go about this, and that's why the tribalism just should not be a part of crypto. And honestly, it halts the retail person from understanding what's going on, because they're looking at like gangs of crypto people, like, no, we're better than you. It's like,
yeah, we need less Jerry's and we need more Drew's and his chicken.
I try, man. That's my decentralized food production, man. It's like, protein on a hoof is how I look at them. You know what I mean? It's good to have. I had a lot of people calling me last night, like, oh my gosh, wow, I should have listened to you 5 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, probably, things aren't going so smooth. Right. So, but then I talked to them about what is going smooth, what is happening. And, I also am looking at all of the ecosystems for distributed GPU systems. I'm looking for crypto projects that are offering distributed GPUs to help hoist up and actually make AI a reality. Because as it sits right now, and everything that they want to do with AI, we do have the most data centers and the largest infrastructure, but there's more needed. And that's what Larry Fink was talking about. I think it was on CNBC 2 weeks ago. He's talking about there's going to be $10 trillion put into building data centers. And they're like, what? Yeah, that's what's going to happen. So
yeah, it's crazy, and it's not even feasible. And that's where you're 1,000% right. And it's something I've been talking about for about a year. I mean, this is where distributed ledger technology is going to kick in, because you're going to have this distributed network that's capable of doing things that these large data centers are doing, but at a fraction of the cost. A couple of days ago, I was talking with, I don't know if you're familiar with Dynex, but they have like a decentralized supercomputer. So it uses neuromorphic quantum computing principles, and it gets around the same numbers as a traditional quantum computer, but at a fraction of the cost. And it's because everything is distributed. But you're exactly right. These data centers are popping up all over the place. And not only that, but then there's the power concerns with it, which is why you have people like ChatGPT, what is his name? Sam Altman. And then you also have Bill Gates looking at small modular reactors. Sorry, I had a brain fart there for a second. Yeah, small modular reactors. So I implore everybody to just go out there and look at small modular reactors. This is actually a thing, and people are actually building them right now to power these data centers, because we just don't have the infrastructure available right now to power these power-hungry AI systems.
Yeah, a query to ChatGPT takes 10 times the power as a Google search.
Yeah.
Think about that. If the method of effectively searching for information on the web changes dramatically, then we've got a huge power deficit.
Yeah, Rolls-Royce, I think, is doing some small modular reactor stuff in Europe. I've been talking about small modular reactors longer than I've been talking about crypto, which is crazy. All of this stuff is happening. I mean, there's people that are way smarter than me that have been thinking about this stuff for a long time. And don't kid yourself. Just because people aren't talking about it doesn't mean that they're not actually looking into it. Some of these people, it takes a little bit of homework, but you can actually do your due diligence and find out, that Microsoft and Bill Gates are funding small modular reactor companies. I mean, it's not front page news yet, but if you take 2 seconds of research, you can see that this stuff is happening. And like Drew pointed out, these large data centers, they're so power hungry that they're going to need distributed systems and distributed computing, because there's no way that you can do it in one centralized location. And it's not going to be very cost effective either. And then you have the security risks associated with centralizing your whole system in one place, which we've seen with these hacks. And when it comes to AI, what are you going to do? Are you going to put your whole AI network on some big server farm out in the middle of nowhere? Like, no.
No, and like that. I mean, there's so much to think about here. Another thing that comes to mind when I'm thinking about AI, when I'm thinking about infrastructure, is the weight of the batteries and the rating of weight capacity that our parking garages and bridges have. Like, we've actually ran into some issues with looking at the weight of those electric semis and of charging stations for just passenger vehicles inside of those parking garages. I also see opportunity within the revamp of parking garages. 10 years down the line, as we see these EVs rolled out harder and harder, there's a big weight difference. And I think that we're going to see a lot of opportunity, honestly, in that kind of construction as well. I just look for all the opportunities on every single different angle of this change to our society as it's happening. In the Constellation DAG, when someone asked me about what's like the coolest, most secure network that you're looking at, it's always been Constellation DAG. Even however far down the coin market cap, I don't care. I'm looking at the technology, I'm looking at the partnerships, and I'm looking at those partnerships being continued, and the use case, the need is there, right? You can't have this explosive excitement without a true intrinsic need being shown. And I don't know if the current situation going on geopolitically doesn't tell people that there is a need for data security for the United States, nothing will. You know what I mean? So I try to paint those pictures. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but it's in front of my face. That's kind of the first and foremost thing I'm looking at.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're exactly right. And it's something that I've tried to point out to everybody, even clearly last year with the National Defense Authorization Act. I mean, there's so much geopolitical stuff happening right now with data and data security. you'd have to be an idiot not to see that.
Pretty much.
Yeah. This stuff is coming like full force, and getting with that specifically, Constellation has a thing with Hawaii, and they're sending up a secure pipeline between somewhere in the Indo-Pacific region. So Hawaii, and I think it's the Philippines somewhere. Don't quote me on that. I'll have to find out specifically like the exact area in Asia. But yes, that is absolutely happening right now. They're setting up a secure data pipeline between those two. So, this stuff is happening. It might not be happening at the speed that the average degen is willing to accept, but it's happening nonetheless. And as I pointed out at the beginning of this stream, that is actually available on YouTube. YouTube, because unfortunately we had a little snafu where the first 10 minutes of the broadcast didn't go out on X for whatever reason. But if you guys go back, the first 10 minutes of this video, I walk through explaining some of the misinformation about what is actually happening right now on this network. Tomorrow, there's a hackathon on this network. $100,000 is up for grabs. I really hope that everybody in the public, if you have any sort of development experience, even on like a novice level, I really encourage you to reach out and look and start building. A lot of the applications in the developer documentation are really simple use cases. A lot of it is just plug and play ready. You can just copy and paste some of this stuff. There's some community members that have already demoed how to do the developer documentation. You can set up your own instance on your private laptop, like in under 10 minutes. I mean, that's how quick you can get your network up and running. You can get it up and running in about 10 minutes. That's pretty mind-blowing. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and viewing this. And it's going to be available for replay. Again, the first 10 minutes of it is on YouTube. It's not on X. Drew, really appreciate you jumping in here. And I'm definitely going to be seeing you in Nashville.
Yes. Excellent. I'm excited.
That's going to be exciting. Yeah, I'm super pumped to go to Nashville, especially all the things that have been happening in the past couple of weeks. It's going to be really interesting to see from a political standpoint if the adoption of blockchain happens like on a national level. I'm thinking that we're probably going to see a stablecoin bill pass. That's my hopes. But you never know. But it's impossible to ignore. I mean, you've got what is it? Something like in the United States, you got something like 50 million crypto holders that are registered voters. So, if either one of these candidates ignores, or not just the two main candidates for president, I mean, just you're talking about any legislator, anybody up in DC, any House representative, any senator. Look, if you keep ignoring blockchain, you're actually ignoring your voter base. And
absolutely,
this should be a bipartisan issue. This isn't a Republican or a Democrat issue. This is a national security issue. And the Department of Defense already thinks this is a national security issue. So vote blockchain. That's what you should do. And I'll let you guys round out the exit here, but
no, I love it, man. I'm just super thankful to be on this space with you guys and learning from you guys, and just spreading the word about crypto. Honestly, and what you said about how many people hold crypto in the United States, I feel like the average crypto holder is loud and intelligent and very, very visible. And I think that they have no choice but to listen at this point. We're basically in what I'm thinking is the next great industrial revolution. It's a great time to be alive. It's a great time to be looking at these disruptive technologies. I'm super excited about it. It gives me a lot of great positive things to focus on outside of all the other noise that's going on in the world. If you look at what's trending on Twitter right now, the world's a little heated. We got to look for something that gives us hope, that helps us build forward and not get stuck in this mindset that, oh, it's all kind of gone off the rails. Now we just got to deal with the results. We can build this future better. And I feel like, you know, DAG and all of these other things that are being built on crypto are going to help us get there. So I appreciate you guys letting me on and just kind of rant here. I've been building floors and doing all kinds of stuff today. So
yeah.
Great. Well, it was awesome, Drew, to kind of get a chance to kind of hear some of your thoughts. And I haven't run across you yet, so this has been a cool experience for me. And as always, Dagnan, it's fun to kind of have these conversations, hear everyone's thoughts. And tomorrow's a really big day. I'm really excited to kind of see what comes out of it. And I'm glad we were able to kind of talk about that, but then also just some of the bigger kind of potential for Constellation and the distributed ledger ecosystem as a whole. So thanks, guys, for giving me some time.
Yeah, I just thought, you know, I love these spaces because there's always so much knowledge being shared, and in the true spirit of what I think distributed ledger technology should be. You know, it's collaborative, and I love that because, you know, we're not going to build a better tomorrow, a better future without being collaborative. You know, I think we've kind of hammered this point home today about not being siloed, because it's a huge problem. And so, you know, again, that's just why I like being a part of things like this. It's what makes me so excited about the hackathon. I'm so excited to see what people build. It gets me pumped. I've been spending a lot of times the last few weeks because I've been, you know, I told some of y'all the story. I mean, I've been laid up in bed a little bit for the past few weeks with nothing else to do. So I've been spending a lot of time. You know, I watched Ready Player One, you know, and you know, I love that movie, and I like seeing, like, you know, that makes me think of like just it from a futuristic standpoint. So I'm really excited to see what we produce, you know, what is produced over these next couple months. So, but yeah, thanks for having me. This has been a blast.
And, you know, again, as we end here, remember to like and subscribe, leave comments. I'll be reading all the comments. Follow everybody here up on stage. And if you missed the beginning, there was a little technical error where it wasn't broadcast the first 10 minutes on X, but it is on YouTube. Look forward to seeing everything tomorrow and all the metagraphs that pop up through this hackathon. And I hope you guys have a good weekend. All right, everybody, take it easy.
Take care.